Good day, everybody. We are Group 8, and today we will be talking to you about AI and the ethics of producing digital media. We'll be walking you through how AI shapes digital content today and the ethical questions that come with it. First, we'll begin with a literature review to establish the existing research on AI and digital media. Next, we'll move into a documentary analysis of The Thinking Game, which offers contemporary insights into AI's evolving role. We'll then examine our case study as a real example of AI generated art and its ethical debates. After that, we'll outline our interview methodology, followed by an interviews overview, summarizing the key perspectives gathered. We'll bring these threads together in our discussion, connecting theory with practice. And finally, we'll close with our conclusion and future outlook.
So, first, to understand the ethical landscape, we first conducted a literature review to diagnose the current state of the field. So, here, academic consensus points to a fundamental crisis in how we define authorship, for example. Researchers like Das and Kuno argue that AI is shifting creativity from a process where a human paints or writes to an outcome where a human simply selects options. This challenges the very definition of what it means to be an artist. And this shift also creates a legal black hole. As the US Copyright Office has noted, current laws are designed for human creators, and this leaves AI-generated works in a vacuum, often unprotected and unownable. And adding to that, scholars describe the training process as data laundering. This means AI companies scrape copyrighted human work without consent to create new models. But beyond authorship, our literature review highlights the immediate societal effects and problems caused by these tools. The biggest concern is not just fake news, but what researchers call an epistemic threat. That means when deepfakes become perfect, we lose the ability to trust any digital media as evidence. So, furthermore, these systems are not neutral, they are mirrors. The literature confirms that AI amplifies existing biases found in training data, and there's a risk of widening the digital divide between the global north, which owns these tools, and the global south, which often provides the data. Now, to understand the future trajectory, we analyzed the 2024 documentary The Thinking Game. And the film follows DeepMind's quest for artificial general intelligence, so systems that don't just mimic us but surpass us. And a key example is AlphaGo's famous Move 37, where an AI played a move so creative in a game that no human would have ever thought of it. So this proves that AI can be a source of new knowledge. However, the documentary also provides a stern warning. It uses the metaphor, you can't look at gunpowder and only make a firecracker. And this means we cannot separate the creative potential of AI from its destructive power. And this is the core tension we explore, the creative vision versus the destructive reality.
To illustrate the theoretical problems we just discussed, we look at patient 0 of the AI art controversy, Jason Allen's Theatre d'Opéra Spatiale. This case is fascinating because it reveals a paradox. On the one hand, Allen put in real work. He didn't just press a button once. He spent 80 hours and over 900 iterations refining the prompts and editing the result in Photoshop. He argued that this process makes him the author. On the other hand, the legal system disagreed. The US Copyright Office ruled that because the generating of pixels was done by AI, the image has no human author and therefore no copyright. This validates the authorship crisis we mentioned in our scientific part. We have a situation where an object is awarded an art prize by humans but denied protection by the law. This specific tension between feeling like an artist but being treated like a machine operator leads us directly to our interviews with active artists. Before discussing our findings, I will walk you through the methodology we used for the interview component. We designed this as an explorative qualitative study because our goal was to understand the subjective experiences of creative professionals. Instead of focusing on numbers, we wanted to capture personal perspectives, emotions, and real life challenges artists face when interacting with AI. For the recruitment, we used purposive sampling. That means we intentionally selected participants who actively work in digital media, mainly photographers, illustrators, and multidisciplinary artists. We also aimed for geographic diversity, including voices from both the global south and the global west. Our participants came from our extended network of family and friends, which helped create a comfortable and trusting interview atmosphere. To collect the data, we used a semi structured interview guide. This format allowed us to ask consistent questions on key topics like copyright and ethics, while still giving each participant the freedom to express their own narrative. It also helped us capture emotional responses, concerns, and hopes regarding AI in the creative field. In total, we conducted 5 in-depth interviews in November 2025.
Okay, next we will be discussing 2 interviews that I conducted with artist friends about how their work is impacted by AI, and it was fascinating to see how aligned they were on the ethics of AI use, even though they come from very different practices and backgrounds. The first was Mohamed Abdouni, a multidisciplinary artist based in Beirut, Lebanon. One of the key points for him was authorship. In his work, he said that he only uses AI by feeding it his own photographs and archives instead of prompts, because he wants the work to be his own, both creatively and ethically. He talks about AI the way early photographers talked about the camera. It can be controversial in the beginning, but in the end, it's all about the integrity of the person using it. Mohamed won the Art Basel Award in Paris last year, where he used AI critically and not decoratively, as a way to question archives, memory, and authenticity, and not just generate pretty images. He also feels strongly that we need clearer copyright laws and shared accountability between artists and AI companies. He also thinks that AI will actually raise the value of handmade work in the future. In his work, he uses AI as, quote, an endless Pinterest board, for mood boarding, not as a shortcut to the final piece. I also spoke with Glossy Beaumont, an illustrator and tattoo artist in Brooklyn, New York. He was very direct about authorship. He thinks that if a machine made the image, claiming it as your own is misleading. He finds the current lack of legal protection around AI, quote, horrifying, and even suggests that maybe no one should own AI outputs at all, since they're built from other artists' work to begin with. He's also really concerned about bias and misinformation, everything from subtle corporate bias in AI systems to full-on deepfakes that can manipulate public perception. For him, transparency is key. Artists should openly say when AI is involved to be able to maintain trust with their audience. Together, these interviews paint a picture of artists who are not necessarily anti-AI, they just want artists to use it honestly, ethically, and make sure it is grounded in real responsibility.
Moving ahead, I would like to talk about the artists that I interviewed. A short disclaimer, all of the artists featured on this slide have given us their verbal consent to use their name and likeness for this presentation. The artists interviewed here are namely Sheena Vora, Kisley Vora, and Zen Vardhan. All 3 of them are fine art artists dealing with different disciplines. To summarize their sentiments, they primarily feel that AI is a tool and not a threat. In their opinion, while AI can be scary and can be seen as something that is intimidating, it is important for us to understand that at the end of the day, it is just a tool which has to be used by human beings. Additionally, they see AI from an evolutionary perspective and not from a replacement perspective. They believe that AI will broaden the horizon for art and the ways in which art is made, but will not replace traditional art the way it has existed for centuries.
We also spoke to Michael Wojcik, who is a music producer, DJ, and label owner. According to Michael, AI in music can be compared to calculators in math examinations. While both can speed up work, you still require a human being to give underlying understanding and meaning to the work that these two tools do. He also believes that originality was never pure. He points out that in music, sample packs, loops, post production, and a lot of other things blur the lines of authorship, and hence, AI is simply a tool that can be used by artists to express the music that they want to create and connect with the audience that they target.
Moving on to our discussion, we aim to synthesize our theoretical research with our field data. And here we observed three critical tensions. So we noticed that the documentary frames generative AI as a massive historical shift towards autonomous intelligence. However, our interviewed artists, such as Sheena Vora, view AI much more pragmatically, simply as a tool. So we argue that artists might be underestimating the speed at which this tool is becoming an autonomous agent. Furthermore, literature warns that AI devaluates creative labor. However, our interviewee Zen Warten provided a counterintuitive insight. He, in a world flooded with perfect synthetic images, says the human flaw becomes a luxury good. And last, regarding the gunpowder metaphor, both the high-level scientists in the documentary and our ground-level artists agree on the gunpowder metaphor, like a little bit. There's a consensus that the technology is dual use and relying on good intentions is not enough. So this brings us to our conclusion and recommendations. We all conclude that the integration of AI into digital media is not just a technical upgrade, but an epistemic shift. We are moving from a world where seeing is believing to a world where digital content has no inherent truth. So, based on the problems identified in our case study, literature, and interviews, we as a research group proposed three specific actions. So first would be the mandatory disclosure. We think since deception is the primary ethical risk, we recommend enforcing cryptographic watermarking standards like C2PA. Then consumers must know if they're looking at a firecracker or a weapon. Secondly, we recommend updating legal frameworks to recognize co-creation. We think if a human spends 80 hours prompting, that labor deserves protection. And in our third point, we think that art education must shift. We think we need to stop teaching only how to draw, but also start teaching how to curate, edit, and judge. Because we think the artist of the future is an editor and not just a creator. So for the end of our presentation, we want to leave you with two questions that were raised by the documentary The Thinking Game. First, how do we maintain control over a creative system that may eventually understand aesthetics better than we do? And second, are we prepared to live in a post-authentic world? The next three slides are the resources, and we thank you for your attention.
The next segment features all of the interviews taken for this project. Due to time constraints, we cannot show these interviews in the conference. However, you can view these interviews on the IPILM YouTube channel in their entirety.